It was revealed yesterday that single-use vapes are set to be banned in England and Wales from next summer in a bid to protect public health. But today, campaigners have said that the ban will not be enough to put youngsters off picking up the habit. And with Australia trialling all vapes to be prescribed by a doctor, should we be following suit here in the UK? What do you think, Denise?
Right, at the risk of sounding like the vape police, because I get accused of that, because... so when I gave up smoking 11 years ago, vapes were kind of a newish thing to us. And I made the decision not to start because I knew I would become addicted to it. And unlike a cigarette that you can put out, people have their vapes with them all the time. You know, I know people who I just say, why don't you just gaffer tape it to your face because you've got that much. Anyway, to try and proceed this story, you know, we're always hearing these stories about we don't know what's in them and, you know, all these different chemicals, and they were meant to be a device to, you know, a temporary device to give up smoking. Recently, I'm talking 4 weeks ago, I posted something which I had no idea would garner so much attention, because a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, had been sitting at her kitchen table. She got a pneumatic drill sound in her head. Her leg went, her fingers started turning blue, and she collapsed onto the table. Now, she had 3 admissions to hospital that week by ambulance, OK?
Thinking she'd had a stroke.
Thinking she'd had a stroke. She was convinced these were what you read about how a stroke would manifest in yourself. Anyway, she got taken to hospital. Each time they did the heart test, the stroke test, they did a scan, they did all of these things, thousands of pounds worth of stuff. And on the 3rd time, she felt not too bad by the time she got to the hospital. She was in A&E, she felt anxious, she went outside and vaped. The minute she vaped, she fell to her knees. She stopped vaping, 95% of these symptoms have gone. So
what did the doctor say? I mean,
nobody said to her at the hospital, do you vape? She then Googled, and I know we shouldn't rely on Dr. Google, but it's something that we all do, and if you go on the right medical channels, medical pages, she Googled stroke-like symptoms in vapes, and she could not believe what came out. Worldwide, people who had been convinced they were having a heart attack or stroke.
We do have to be careful, though, don't we? Because we don't want to alarm people. There are a lot of people who do use them, and we don't have like any direct proof that these two things were linked.
And I'm not trying to say that it's direct proof. I'm just saying what she discovered as a result of her own condition, what she discovered by Googling it was that this is exactly her symptoms had been put down to vaping. So I'm just saying we don't, you know...
Liv, did it worry you?
Yeah, I think it's scary, actually, because I think, for me, it's... One, like Denise said, it's the practicality of it, right? If you smoke a cigarette...
Because you did smoke at one time,
didn't you?
And,
you know, I've no shame in admitting that, I'm not proud of it, but I did smoke for a number of years. And when I became convinced that I wanted to stop, then people were saying, well, why don't you try a vape? And actually, I quickly realised that vaping for me was going to be really dangerous, because in the way of a cigarette, you have a cigarette and it comes to an end, and then you have to consciously think, I'm going to go outside and have another one. Like you said, the vape is just in your hand all day long. So, you know, I'm not trying to make a case for one or the other, but it's that thing where you can just have it glued to you, and you're ingesting these chemicals. For, you know, some people are doing this like 10, 11 hours a day.
And the thing is, we don't have long-term results, do we? But, I mean, they were originally...
My big worry is children, though. What my kids tell me about how many... And I think it's just disgraceful when you go into these shops and they are targeted. It's as simple as that. Bright colours, cherry flavour, orange flavour. Mix the cherry and the orange.
Vape shops have got fluorescent coloured lights outside the shop.
I was listening to your radio programme, and I think there was somebody...
It's essential listening.
It's so marvellous. And I think there was somebody on there saying that in the rest of Europe, you go into a cold pharmacy, you go up the back, you're given a white box, and then that's a prescription
there's
for a
funny
couple of
thing.
weeks.
We're talking about should they be available only on prescription. The fact is, right now, they're not available on prescription. And originally, when they were brought in, it was to get you off the cigarettes. That was the purpose of having them.
And
but these kids, it's not that to get them off cigarettes. It's
China have banned fruit-flavoured vapes for their own country, but not for export. So we can still have them, but they've banned their own people from
But also, I've heard enough doctors on various other radio shows. I do listen to other ones sometimes. And they are really concerned. You've got children's developing lungs, and many of them vape non-stop. And apparently, where they really fell into this was the pandemic. Do you remember when you were young and you'd start smoking, you want to make smoke circles? You can do this endlessly. So I just think it's really...
dangerous.
I mean, in terms of whether or not, you know, a prescription model would be right, I mean, we've got a comment from the UK Vaping Industry Association, and they think that that would be a disaster to make it prescription only. And they say that since it was introduced in Australia, they've seen a huge rise in black market products. And that is
I don't believe
in
all the banning world that we live in, but I just think there should be more information and there should certainly more education.
Should be. Why is a child vaping? Why would you need a child to be able to buy a vape?
Well,
there's no other reason than big company making a lot of money on growing lungs. It's not right.
I think that's a key question. You know, why do you want a child to vape? And I mean, some of the stats that we have of like 9-year-olds vaping is pretty horrific.